Hey world, it's Michael Gascon, the horse guru, and I'm coming with you live from Gascon Horsemanship, and we are going to be talking today about when to switch from your halter or balzel or hackamore to a bit, and why, and do you even need to? So we're going to give everybody a couple moments to hop on here, and we're going to kind of discuss that, and any time along the way, if you guys have a question about said process, feel free to ask. Beautiful sunny day in South Mississippi. Got a little breeze going on. These storms have been going in and out, and it's feeling good, not too hot. Been riding a bunch of ponies. Miss Roxanne just got off of old Larry, a wonderful Mustang that came all the way from Wisconsin to get worked, and that boy is doing good. As a matter of fact, he just went through that process. So he is a Mustang that is 7 or 8 years old from the Devil's Garden, and he just went through the process of switching out from a halter to a Snaffle. Now, when we get to talking about this switch, the first question I get asked all the time, do I have to? Do I have to switch from a halter, a balzel, or a hackamore to a bit if I don't want to be in my horse's mouth? And the answer is absolutely not. You do not have to do anything. Which is one thing my grandfather was telling me, son, you don't have to do anything but die. Nothing else in this life is something you have to do. When it comes to horses, you don't have to switch into a bridle. For all of our training horses, we make sure that they're educated in a bridle, first and foremost, because the industry is their standard. And a lot of people, if they see you riding around in a halter and the horse does absolutely everything perfect. Hell, if you make a video and the horse does everything bridleless, they'll still say, hey, but does he take a bit? Because if he doesn't take a bit, I don't feel like I'm in control. Okay, so for that fact, we make sure that we teach everything, educate everything how to take a bridle. Now, when it comes down to it, when is the time to switch a horse from a halter, in our case, to a snaffle, which would be the next step for us? The answer to us is very simple. We want to educate the horse on how to give to pressure, which is the language of the horse. Pressure and release. It's the way that we communicate with the horses, regardless if you work liberty and it's with whips, if you're a horsemanship trainer, it's with a horsemanship halter, if you're a finish trainer, it's with a bit, if you use spurs, if you don't use spurs, if you're clicker training, if you don't clicker, it's all pressure and release. So for me, I like to work in a natural horsemanship halter to start and have the whole conversation of tying and giving and flexing and bending and backing and disengaging, all those conversations on the horse's face. Number one, there's a lot more surface area, and number two, the horse's face is a lot less sensitive than their mouth. If I had the option myself, you're going to have a conversation with me, and the two ways you're going to get me to do something is on my face or in my mouth. I'm kind of a sissy when it comes in my mouth. If I bite my tongue, oh, it's a bad day. So I find it to be a lot kinder to have the conversations of pressure and release, of flexing, of bending, of backing, of stopping, all on their face first, so they have the idea. When it comes to horsemanship, pressure is never the problem. So what I mean is, the fact that your horse it's a big bit in your horse's mouth, that's not the issue. The fact that the horse doesn't know the answer to relieve himself of that pressure can be an issue. Oh, the horse is great, but you can't touch him with a spur. Spurs are not your issue. The fact that the horse doesn't understand how to remove that pressure from that spur, doesn't know how to move the most advanced horses in the world, dressage and reining, those people live with spurs, and their horses don't have a problem with it, but the horses are educated. Oh, he doesn't like this kind of bit or that kind of bit, or this is uncomfortable to him. The only reason that a bridle or something can be uncomfortable to a horse is if the horse doesn't give the pressure. If they give and they follow your direction, thus you're not having to use that bridle while it's in their mouth, then it's not going to be uncomfortable. So it goes right back to the education of the horse. So when it comes to educating the horse on how to turn left, turn right, and that's basically what we're talking about, pick their head up or put their head down, stop or back, or any of these things, I prefer to have the conversation on their face with a natural horsemanship halter. Once I have a horse like Larry, for example, the Mustang that's in from Wisconsin, already turning left and right, disengaging his hindquarters, moving his shoulders, I can already guide him around, tell him to go through obstacles, tell him to go play soccer, do these things. With a halter, I can tell him to go somewhere he doesn't want to go, which means he tries to shut down, and I turn him left and right until he wants to go forward. When I can have this conversation with a halter, then for us, it's time to move into a snaffle. The reason we move into a snaffle is mostly because industry standard, and two, whenever you're working inside the horse's mouth, you're going to get more in return for the energy that you put in. And the end goal of horsemanship is the least amount of effort on your end, the biggest result on their end. So just like when you're driving a car, you press a lever and you're doing 70 miles per hour. That is a lot of return for your energy. You barely mash the gas and you're going somewhere. So bridles are meant to do the same thing, whether it's just a snaffle and we're talking about left and right and flexing. The idea is that it takes less effort for you to soften that horse and get that horse going left, right. Then whenever it's time to switch from that snaffle into a finished bridle, into a curb bit, into something more advanced, it would depend at that point. For me, a halter and a snaffle are both schooling bridles, and they are for getting the horse a good foundation, teaching the horse left and right, teaching the horse how to go. Just with a halter, just with a snaffle, you should be able to ride that horse to the end of the earth. You should be able to go over any obstacle. You should be able to go in a soccer game or a polo game or any kind of point A, point B. So the question is, hey, I have a trail horse. Do I need to ride with a snaffle? Do I need to put anything in their mouth? Absolutely not. Just with a halter, we expect them to get from point A to point B. If they refuse, left and right is how we'll get them there. Everything that's not beneficial to your health is in a straight line. Bucking, running, rearing, all that's in a straight line. So if we can get them moving left, if we can get them moving right, we can get that horse to go anywhere we want to. So if you have an obstacle horse or a trail horse, then you absolutely don't need a bridle. You can do it all with a halter. We've done it more times than we can count. Get that horse from point A to point B just with a halter. When we do move into a bridle, a lot of times it's to get the horse more advanced. What do I mean more advanced? When we start getting that horse and we're looking to do Western work and we're looking to be able to touch one-handed and move their shoulders around and get them to drop their head one-handed, there's bridles for that. Whenever we are looking to get a dressage horse up in frame and pick their head up and stick their nose in and get a gaited horse to do the same thing, go around a show ring and hold his head up and hold his nose in and do it at the touch of a finger, there's bridles for that. And the shape of the shank, the shape of the purchase, the way that it sits in the horse's mouth, the mouthpiece that it has, all these things help you make sure that it's easy to do that. So in the finished show ring, whether it's dressage or reining or gaited work, the horse with the least amount of cues, the horse that has the best transitions, that the person moves the least, is going to be winning. So with that being said, we want a bridle that has the least amount of movement, that is the least forgiving, but also the horse can find comfort in. So a lot of times when we're getting a horse to be a good horse, to get off of our bridle, to ride obstacles, to go where we want, it'll be a broken bridle, a snaffle with shanks, a halter, things that they can't grab a hold of. Every national championship and every world championship that I've ever won has been on a solid bit, something that the horse can grab a hold of and feel comfortable and feel confident, but also that has a small margin of error, because I don't want to move my hands to communicate with that horse. I want to communicate with that horse right in my fingertips. And the more that bridle allows me to do that, the better it's going to be for me and my horse and that finished result, which is what we're going to be looking for. So, colt starting, problem solving, starting a horse from scratch, getting to know a horse, I like the halter for all of these things. If I can't ride a horse with a halter, I have no business riding the horse. That tells me that there's something fundamentally wrong with that horse that is missing and lacking that I need to fix before I ride it. So never is the bit the only way that I can ride the horse, number one. Number two, once they understand that and they give, if I look to get them more advanced, before I can get to that finished bridle, I want to educate their mouth on how to carry a bit, so I'm going to start with the snaffle. Once their mouth is educated and they can give, stop, turn, bend, then I can start adding another pressure, which is the curb chain, which is going to be some shanks, some leverage. And again, that's going to help me depending on what I'm trying to do, whether it's drop their head, pick up their head, whatever finished work that I'm trying to accomplish. If the horse, I have no intention of making him a finished horse, I have no intention of showing him in a show ring, and he's going to be a trail horse, and he's going to be an obstacle horse, and he's just going to walk around and relax, maybe some walk, trot, canter, but really not get a finished finished up for the show ring, then I really don't need him in a finished bridle. So that's when and why I'm going to look for it. Let me hop through these comments section and see. Alexander, I use a Snaffle on a 5-gated saddlebred, can't trot canter. All right, so if we're looking to trot and canter that 5-gated saddlebred, for that trot, we're going to be looking to get that horse's head down. Whenever you are looking, I use a Snaffle. Whenever we're using a Snaffle and we're looking to get that horse to trot and canter, we're going to need to lower his head a little bit. A lot of times they're stuck in place, so you'll have that horse pacing and gaiting. So whenever I look to get my Passos, whenever I look to get the Rockies, the Tennessee Walkers, the Saddlebreds, to be able to trot and canter and relax, even if I use a Snaffle, now we go right back to why you use a finished bridle. That Snaffle or that halter is direct contact. So that means wherever your hands are, that's what you're telling them to do with their head. So if I want that horse to canter off quietly and easily, like a quarter horse, I'm going to have to drop their head low like a quarter horse. So in the beginning, when you're showing the horse how to do that, you're going to lower your hands to lower that horse's head. If you can get that same horse, that same saddlebred, to drop his head below his back, he will trot and he will canter quietly for you. But with using that Snaffle, you're going to have to be very obvious and very direct, and you're going to have very low hand carriage. I mean, I'm talking about your hands will be lower than the pommel of your saddle in the beginning for him to understand, oh, wait a second, I can drop my head and be on a loose rein and trot and canter around. We get a lot of saddlebreds in here for training, for gentling, and for canter work and things like that. And that's the biggest thing, is they've been educated to keep their head up. So then we have to use our halter, we have to use that Snaffle to get them to drop their head. Eventually, if you can get them more on a reining bit or correction bit where with one hand you could just pick up and ask them to drop their head, it makes your job easier. So that's when you start talking about, hey, does this horse know how to drop its head? Is it educated? Then you can use a bridle for that. If not, you could just look for it with the halter or the Snaffle. I've been riding in a 1-inch hinge port bit. When do you know if it's okay to try a solid mouthpiece bit? Good question, Mr. Darren. So when you're deciding to go from a broken mouthpiece to a solid mouthpiece, the thing that you need to know is that, does that horse give the pressure? Is it a horse that really gets stuck on you? Is it a horse that has the issue pulling on you? If he is that type of horse that's shaking his head and pulling on you, that solid bit, that joker's probably not going to give, because he's not educated to give the pressure. By the time that we get done with the halter work and we get done with the Snaffle work, that horse is going to give to any pressure that's put on him. He's going to look to put his face to get away from it. As long as he knows this, you will never have an issue moving to a solid bit. The only time you have an issue moving to a solid bit or a finished bit is if the horse doesn't give the pressure. And then they're really not going to understand how to stay inside that frame and how to stay away from that problem. And again, it's only a problem if the horse doesn't give. Horse can't trot or canter because of a bad pass. Alexandra, it's all about getting that head down. We get horses all the time here that are rescues that are problematic, and it's as simple as this. If you can show them how to move off on a loose rein, and that sounds easy, it's a lot more work in real life. That lateral work, teaching them how to flex and give and constantly putting them on a loose rein and not holding them back or trying to hold them down, but flexing to the side and releasing, flexing to the side and releasing, and getting them on that loose rein. Any horse that can move around with its head below its back is going to have that nice canter for you. I haven't met the first one that will drop its head, be on a loose rein, and you can't pick up a quiet canter. The problem that most problem horses have is they're in charge of their head. They have their heads up here, and you're arguing and saying, and they're tense and tight. Well, you can't be tense and tight and then have a relaxed trot or have a relaxed canter. So it's all about that lateral flexion to get that loose rein. If you guys have any questions about this, everything that I'm saying is on the Team MG membership club. We have a series called Control the Head, Control the Horse, which is just a dozen different exercises to get that horse soft, get that horse easy. And that's going to be at the Team MG club. Let me see if there's any more questions on bridles. If you have a horse that hangs on the Snaffle, would you suggest going back to the halter for softness or a Snaffle with a twist? Miss Cassandra, if you have a horse that's laying on your Snaffle, first and foremost, Remember, a lot of snaffles are for comfort. So it's to make sure that you don't have a snaffle that's saying, please hold on to me, at the same time that you're thinking, please don't hold on to me. People do this all the time. If you have a French link snaffle, a double jointed snaffle, dog bone snaffle, something like this, these bits are made to give English horses confidence driving forward and driving towards the jump. I see people snatching and pulling and grabbing on horses with a bridle that's meant to give the horse confidence. So it's kind of like having a dog that is pulling on your choke collar. So to make the dog feel better, you put a flat collar on it. Now it's dragging you even more and you're getting upset. But in that scenario, you realize, wait a second, I just put on something softer. Let's make sure that your bridle, your snaffle, isn't made to make the horse confident. Why do I say that? Because if you have a horse that's pulling on you, the idea is for them not to pull on you so that you can give them a loose rein. So in that case, either way you go, probably going back to the halter, in my opinion, to soften that horse up and show him that he can go off of the rein. Because if you have a horse that has education and pulling on a person, then it's hard to break that habit unless you try a new approach. So if I have that same issue, I'm going to go to the halter first and show that horse how to move off on a loose rein and how not to grab me. Kind of like teaching your dog obedience that is grown but doesn't know obedience yet. Do you train a horse and the kid that's going to ride it, do you have a program like that? Yes, Cody, we have a problem just like that. We're constantly training horses, and whenever the horse is up for training, the owners will come in and they will learn with it. Also, we offer a week-long retreat where people come in for a week with their horse, and we do all kind of ridiculousness. We chase cows, we do obstacles, we go on trails, we go in the swamps, we play horse soccer, we teach them tricks, we do all kinds of stuff, and really show people how to be safe with their horse and what to look for when they're going to have a problem. I can ride a rope halter, but I can't get a bit in him. Okay, Miss Kathy, number one, if the horse is riding good with a rope halter, you don't necessarily need a bit. But if you're having an issue with the bit, one thing that I always like to do is make sure that that horse is soft and easy and giving. Make sure that horse is soft and easy and giving. And then I want to take my finger and I want to rub the roof of his mouth. And you'll notice that he'll have ruffles in the roof of his mouth. Don't even worry about the bit. Don't worry about anything. Just stick your finger in the side of his mouth, upside down, where he doesn't have teeth, and rub his mouth, and he'll open it and do it again. And release and do it again. And release and do it again. So many horses have already fought somebody to put a bridle in to the point that they see a bridle and start throwing their head up. Get them soft, get them easy, get them dropping their head, and then start tickling the roof of their mouth until they open it. Number two, grab the bridle by the mouthpiece in your palm, stick a finger out, and put it in their mouth. When they open it from the front of the horse, stick it in their mouth, nice and easy. People want to put their arm around the horse's head and neck, where the horse's head is below them, and then shove the bridle in the horse's mouth where they can't see their mouth. So they're banging on the horse's mouth, they're banging on the horse's gums. This is okay if you have a finished broke horse and you've been taught this way, but this is not safe for the person, because if a horse throws his head up, it bops you in the head, gives you some summer teeth. You know, some are here, some are there, some are dangling in your mouth. Number two, you can't see the horse's mouth, so you can't avoid their teeth. If you're directly in front of them and you have your hand on the mouthpiece of the bridle and you stick your finger in their mouth, and when you see a nice wide opening, you quietly put the bit in their mouth and then slide the bridle over their ears, that's a lot easier and a lot less friction. So that's what I would do if I'm trying to bridle that horse. What are the different types of shanks and what do each of them do? That is a great question, Miss Jill, but that is a whole conversation just in it. There are so many different bridles out there, and there are bridles out there. I've been in places where people are snatching and yelling and cussing a horse because it keeps dropping its head and they're scared it's going to buck, and they're snatching and they're pulling, and the bridle that they have on the horse's face is to drop a head, and vice versa. There are bridles made to pick up a head. There's bridles made to stick a nose out. There's bridles meant to get a horse soft and not touch the bridle. And there's bridles made for the horse to grab a hold of it and want to pull. And it's a whole lifetime of education just in all the different types of bridles. That's why at my clinics and at my retreats and things, we always start everything with a halter, because for the vast majority of people, the 80% of people in America riding a horse, a halter is all you need to achieve all of your goals, everything that you're trying. Granted, I understand that A lot of you guys out there are trying to compete at the highest levels, do wonderful, crazy things. Yes, you might need a bridle or something to help you with that. Advanced, as polished as you can get it. But for the vast majority of pleasure riders who are just enjoying their horse, it's just a halter is all you need to get that horse from point A and point B. And the reason that I like to do that as well is because it cuts a lot of the static and makes it very clear what you want to your horse and what your horse is or isn't doing for you. There can be, oh no, you got bad teeth. Oh no, it's a bit that makes you uncomfortable. Oh no. When you're riding with a halter, the horse gives or it doesn't give. It turns or it doesn't turn. It backs or it doesn't back. So that question right there, what are all the different type of bits and what do we use them on, is such a vast subject. That's one of the reasons that I love the halter for folks. And then as you start getting into a discipline, then you see the bridles and the mechanics of them for each and every discipline. Also, if you're part of Team MG, I have a whole video just on like I don't know, probably a 45-minute video just on the different types of bits. And that 45 minutes to me feels so minute just talking about the different types of shanks and different types of mouthpieces, because I could talk about bits all day long. Where can you find this info? If you go to GasconHorsemanship.com, you can find all the info on the retreats to sign up there. We won't have another one for our Southern Heat until the fall, but then really fun thing to do. I keep bantering your halter. He rides comfortably and softly no matter where we ride at. At what point do you say this horse just needs to stay bitless because he's so comfy? All right, Mr. Cole. So a lot of people, a lot of my clientele, a lot of people who have started watching us, they just ride on a halter indefinitely. You know, I've had clients for 10 years that's all they ride is just a halter. And you'll be coming around the Appalachian Trail, you'll be riding a national forest, and you'll ride up on some other horses, and the people will say, oh my gosh, you're riding in a halter. Are you crazy? You're going to die. I don't think it's far-fetched to say that my clients riding in the halter are safer than the people riding in a bit. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying that the halter is more powerful than a bridle. I'm not saying that rope is tougher than steel. I'm not saying any of these things. What I am saying is the people who are riding in my halters, they do the due diligence to make sure that the brakes work, the steering wheel works. They know how to control their horse. They studied enough to feel comfortable in those halters. And the fact that they feel comfortable in those halters lets you know that they did the work to know when it is and when it isn't right. A lot of people buy horses all over this country. The trainer gives them the horse and they say, here's this bit. Or worse, they just go to Tractor Supply and pick a bit and put it on the horse, and they expect for that car to ride for the rest of its life without needing an oil change, brake pads change, power steering fluid, anything. No maintenance. They don't learn a program. There's no ideology into it. They just had a good ride or they didn't have a good ride, and that is so sketchy. So when do you say, hey, it's just a bitless horse and I'm going to ride it with a halter? You can say that whenever you want to. The question that I want to hear, are you having fun? As long as you're having fun, that's all need to be said. And if you're hearing this and you ride with a bridle and you're having fun, keep riding with it. All we're trying to do is make as many people safe and happy on their horses as possible. Because if you're paying for it to have a good time, it's not a good time if you don't feel safe. If your brain keeps getting in the way and say, oh my gosh, we're going to die. Oh my gosh, we're going to die. It's hard to have fun if that's the case. So the moral of the story is you can ride with anything you want to as long as you're getting the result from the horse that you're looking for. All right, so I'm gonna go through here real quick. Bits. Oh yeah, Robert loves bits. What do you suggest as a finish bit? I ride him in a broken snaffle and a tom thumb. Seems to be good. For me, a finish bit is a solid bit. Woo. A finish bit is a solid bit. The reason being is, for me to be finished, I want the most consistent horse in the class. I wouldn't care what class I rode in. I wouldn't care what show. I never, ever want to get beat because somebody out-consisted me. If they have a better horse than me, hey, these things happen. If you have more horsepower than me, awesome. You pay more money than I pay for my horse? Okay, cool. never get beat because the horse is more consistent than you. And for me, a solid bridle, and whether that's a bar or a spoon bit or a correction bit, a little ported bit, something solid that all the conversation happens right inside your fingertips, that there's no movement in it, the least amount of movement possible. That, in my opinion, is the finished bridle. And that has been, in my experience, what I've won all my national championships and world championships with. Because when I get in the show ring, I don't want to move anything. I don't want anybody but the horse to know when I'm communicating with him. Nobody else should see me communicate. The people in the stand should think that my horse has like voice commands and he's listening to the announcer. And whenever the announcer asks for a transition, that my horse is listening to them and then proceeded to do what the announcer asks. And I find that the more solid a bit is, the less movement in it, the less margin of error that bridle has, the more consistent our horse is going to be. Will you be traveling to do clinics this year? If so, where can we go to find a schedule? Yes, Miss Jill. I travel all over. I believe the next place I'm going is to Washington State and then Alaska after that. I just came back from Missouri, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. And you can find that on GasconHorsemanship.com as well. Do you start young horses anytime during the year or only at certain times? Yes, ma'am. Miss Sabrina, we start horses year-round. There's always somebody sending us something to start from somewhere. So we're in this luxurious place in our career where we're always riding something young and dumb. We're always riding a problem, always riding something that wants to murder us. But it just becomes like another day at the office, and it really minimizes how sketchy it is. So we were playing horse soccer, what was it, yesterday? And there was probably half a dozen colt starting horses in there at the same time. When I say colt starting horses, I mean horses like with less than 10 rides. And myself and all my students were in there playing horse soccer and bumping into each other and pushing the ball all around, and it's good fun. We treat young horses like they're so old that they act old. It doesn't even make sense. We'll take a horse with 2 rides and take it through the swamp and say, hey, we expect you to go, let's go. Okay. And since they don't have a normal, or since they don't think that, they think people are strange and they don't have existing normal because they haven't been ridden for 10 years, then they're just like, okay, I'll do the obstacles. I'll play soccer. I'll go wherever you want me to go. And we say thank you. So yes, to answer your question, we start horses year round. Miss Kate says you can find the clinic schedule at horseguru.com, and she put the link below. Cody says, do you break them in new bits on the ground first? So if you watch our Respect series, we'll do everything from the ground first, seeing how our horses give the pressure. And we do something called first grade, which is our version of lunging, which has nothing to do with wearing the horse out. It has everything to do with them being soft and supple and giving. Whenever I switch from the halter to a snaffle, I will do that one day before I ride off. I'll grab them by the rein and look to lunge them with the left rein, and then switch directions, lunge them with the right rein, and seeing how they're giving, so it's not a surprise when I get in the saddle. Once I do that and they're giving the way that they were giving with the halter, then I ride them the exact same way. But it's amazing if your standard of giving is give no matter what. If you're scared, if you're fast, if whatever's happening, look to give to the pressure, and it's so simple. You could put whatever on them, and they're just like, oh, okay, I'll give to this too. Clarity is the superpower. Have you ever worked with teaching a fully blind horse in your halter and methods? It's working great for me with a blind Welsh, but I do not incorporate vocal commands with it since she can't see my body language. As a matter of fact, Mr. Cole, yes, I have. I've worked with multiple blind horses. My favorite is one in Franklin, New Jersey, at a clinic that I do up there with some good folks. And his name is Leroy, and he is an Appaloosa that got uveitis, and they removed his eyes. And the first time that I went up there, he was being treated a little bit special. And I went up there and did not treat him special. I just grabbed him and started backing him up and moving him around. And just like that, he remembered all his training from back when he could ride. And walk, trot, canter, both direction over obstacles. the biggest thing is to not treat them like a victim. A lot of times a horse gets vision impaired and we treat them special, and then they start acting special. There are millions of horses in the world today that get driven with blinders, that are driving carriage horses, and nobody treats them special. They just expect them to go where they can see or they can't see. Regardless, they send them forward, and those horses work good. So whenever you have a visually impaired horse, you're their CNI person. So the trick is to drive them, let them know where you're at, let them know at all times what you're expecting from them. And as long as you can bridge that gap and they can use you as their eyes, then visually impaired horses can be some of the best horses that you've ever had, because they will go where you're asking unquestioned. So the trick is, don't treat them special. Just act as if you're their CNI person, and you can make a really good horse out of a horse they can't see. Well, guys, thank you. It has been another awesome Horse Talk Live. Put in the comments below what you want us to talk about next week, and we can do that. We can talk about whatever subject you guys want to talk about. We're constantly working. We're constantly making videos for you guys. We're constantly going around trying to help folks. So anything that you guys want to hear, just put in the comments below, and I will see you next week on Horse Talk Live. See you then.